Hi guys, welcome back to the Improvement Season podcast. Hopefully you have found us now as we have transitioned onto, well, on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. If you're on YouTube, we never left. Thanks for staying around. How's it going over there, Pascal? You've just cracked open a beverage of Monster variety.
It is. Maybe, I don't know, people would say that it's irresponsible to already drink Monster now, just because over the weekend I caught some kind of stomach bug, which completely knocked me out, by the way. And today is the first day where I'm actually feeling much better, like much better. Hunger is kind of back again, which wasn't really the case of the past days. And yeah, I mean, now I'm back already drinking Monster and coffee and all that kind of shit.
Do you know what caused the, was it food poisoning? Because you and Katie both had it, right?
It was Tony. It was kids.
That's, I guess there's not much you can do about that. So he was also puking as well.
Yeah. So he was puking I think at the end of last week it was.
Oh, okay.
And we thought that it may have, that it was maybe something that he ate in the kindergarten or so. Because he puked several times and then afterwards he was just fine. But this is what kids are. They are just, I don't know, they are so tough. Like with, 40 degrees fever, they are still jumping around, doing their thing, you know? And for him, it was just like he was puking and yeah, we were just hoping that it wasn't like any kind of infection. But it turned out that it was, because Katie then actually on Saturday midday felt terrible. I didn't, and I was then taking care of the kids, the dog, and all that kind of stuff. And then when everyone was quieting down and I was about to go to bed, I was already then starting. It was just like happening in a couple of minutes, actually, feeling much worse overall, feeling like distended and bloated. That sensation as if the body isn't really digesting what it is that you had for dinner or whatever, you know. And then several hours later, everything came out. Or not everything, unfortunately. Katie is very lucky. So sorry for the details, but Katie is someone who just goes through a very rough couple of hours, but then starts to immediately feel better because the body got completely rid of everything. Whereas I'm someone who's barely ever kind of getting rid of that stuff, either through the mouth or through my butthole. And that is to my detriment, because then I'm carrying around that shit for several days and feeling awful.
Literally.
Yeah. And I would love, because on that night I was actually puking, and that has been the first time since I think 2013. And 13 was due to a salmon, so food poisoning. And I still felt like, oh man, I have so much more in me. Please, just let me get rid of everything. Didn't happen. What a shitty body. Even there, it's kind of betraying me.
I absolutely think people would prefer it to be like short and sharp, like painful, but quick and over and done with, versus long, slow and drawn out. It's like, would you prefer to slowly peel off that plaster, or would you just rip it off? And it's like, once it's off, it's like, it's okay.
Exactly. I mean, Katie, she's always going through a rough time. So my mom-in-law needed to come over, as the people and listeners may know, and you also, Steve. She was a physician. I wanted to say she was a doctor, had her own clinic, and she needed to put an infusion onto Katie because she was puking out so much liquids and was already kind of fainting and all that kind of stuff. So she came over so that Katie didn't really need to go to the hospital. So maybe this is also nothing to ask for.
No.
But at the same time, it's just like, until yesterday, I was just like out, like very much out. And now I'm finally back. And it's such an unfortunate timing, because the week prior to that, I took an entire week away from the gym. And on Friday and Saturday, I had my first training sessions being back at the gym. And I didn't even train legs up to this point. And then I needed to take another couple of rest days. Up until today, here in the morning, was the first time that I was able then to go back, train some legs. in itself, I'm always thinking like, I know better. I don't need to be worried about it anymore. I've been doing this since long enough. But at the same time, funny enough, just you and I talked about it just in one of the latest episodes where it was like everything that is longer than a week, and you're getting kind of that
itchy
anxiety, you're getting kind of nervous. You just want to go back to the gym, and that's what I had. I was starting to get pretty annoyed that something now came up.
It's one of those things where it's like brushing your teeth. It's just part of your daily routine.
Yeah.
And like exercise does also make you feel good, like the feel good hormones and everything, the endorphins that get released. So it's just a nice thing to do. So especially when you were intending to go in and then you were forced, you couldn't, like that sucks. But I always look at the silver lining when these sort of things happen. Like if it happens to a client where they had more time off the gym than they intended to have, I'm like, you probably won't need to like active recovery or pull back. Like we can probably train harder for longer now. So like take it as like a plus in that sense.
And I think, because I don't know if I've talked about it in the last Improvement Season podcast, that my hip was flaring up for the first time in like ages, like giving me very, very nasty sensations, which reminded me big time of the time before surgery. Not really a pleasant sensation, to be honest. I couldn't even tie my shoelaces anymore. I couldn't even bend over. That's how painful my hips were. So my left hip. And because of that, I had even more time now recovering and giving it a little bit of a break. So it's like I said, there's always, if you really want to look for something positive, you can find something positive. It's kind of spinning up your own narrative around certain things. People do it all the time when it comes to investing. There always needs to be a narrative, but there's also the saying of show me the news and what is it? Show me the news and I'll show you the charts, or the other way around, or something like this. That people always try to find a specific reason as to why the price is moving and all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of the same here. Yeah. If you just look for a specific thing and you're too, I don't know, you're too hung up on that one thing, then you forget about maybe all of the other possible, the positive things that can happen during that time.
It's funny. This is on, it's definitely related, but in Love Island, which me and Charlotte do watch in the evening, it's a saying that really grinds my gears, but I understand where it comes from, and it's related to this, is they say like, everything happens for a reason. They just like say it in every situation where like, oh, this guy's cheated on you or whatever it is. Like, oh, everything happens for a reason. I'm like, of course it fucking does. Like things don't just happen for no reason. But they mean it as like, oh yeah, like they try and spin it into a positive type of thing. So it's just funny. I definitely, it's good to look for the silver lining.
Yeah, totally. Without now talking too much about shows such as Love Island. Because Katie and I, we do watch stuff like this as well. And sorry to say this, but these people are most of the time so predictable in the things that they are saying. And they are contradicting themselves so much. Everyone, it's kind of laughable, because if you ask them like, what's the most important thing that you're looking for in a relationship? And everyone is giving you the normal spiel of like loyalty, truthfulness and all that kind of stuff. And everyone in the next minute is not sticking to these kind of things themselves.
They go for the hottest person that's come in.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It makes me feel old, because I look at these people and I used to feel like I could relate, like I was a similar age or whatever. And now I'm like, oh man, like I'm a decade older than most of these people that are in there. No wonder I think of them as quite immature.
Yeah. But I don't know how you feel about it, Steve, but that jump from I'm feeling young to I'm feeling old happened overnight. There was no slow transition of like, I'm neither feeling old nor I'm feeling young. It was just like all of a sudden, Katie and I, we sometimes are in that situation or finding ourselves in that spot and situation of like, shit, we are now old. I don't know when it happened, but we are now old officially.
It's actually really funny. I still don't know. I still feel like I'm straddling old and young, but I think that's partially because I don't have kids and like I'm still into like anime, and I still feel like I'm quite like young at heart in those senses. But in the same sense, like I think I've always been like a bit. I think you were like this. Maybe you weren't for a time, but then you quickly matured because obviously you had your party years. But I think I was, after my accident in particular, because that just took so much away from me, I was very like serious and like kind of mature, or it forced maturity upon me, because I was like, life is kind of short. I want to kind of move forward with these things, and fuck drinking. It makes me feel like shit anyway. So like I just ended up moving away from all of that. But I feel like in some ways it's weird. Looking back, I'm like, man, have I missed out? Like, do I need to like go and like do all these wild things because I've missed out on that part of my life? Because like the accident kind of took me like that away from me. But I don't think it's everyone. If I ever speak to people, they're like, it's not worth it, Steve. Don't just ignore that. Like, you're on a good path.
There are so many things where I'm now looking back in hindsight and be like, it was so much not worth it. Of course, you have now that experience to talk about it. But so many things were just like, don't do it. Also, the risk reward is simply not there. Like, there have been sessions where you just like drank so much alcohol where it's like, now you're looking back and think, that was just fucking foolish. There was so much risk in it without little to gain, especially for you, right? And I don't know. Also, it's funny because when I remember back to my mom, she was still a fairly young mom, but when she was at my age, I really felt like she was much more like an adult as I am nowadays. Yeah. And the same goes for Katie as well. And I could actually see that there's some truth to it, because they are also a different generation and have grown up in different environments. And for me personally, the things that Katie and I do, I never could have imagined that my mom, or especially her parents, because her parents are even more mature and responsible than my mom ever was. But I can't even imagine that my mom would have done certain things or talked in a certain way and watched something like anime at home and stuff like this, you know?
Sometimes I don't know if I was just like completely ignorant to what my parents did. It was like they were just like their lives were completely separate from my lives. I have no idea what they're doing. So it's weird thinking like that. But kind of relating it back to the gym and stuff, there's just recently I have seen some younger guys in Yorkies where I train, and like maybe they could be younger than 15 quite easily. And I look at them and I'm like, man, do they look at me like that old Jack guy who's like, I don't know, like they're like worried that I'm assessing their technique or something, or maybe they look at me and they're like, oh, I lift as heavy as him or something. I don't know. Like, I'm like, am I that guy now? Because I don't think I have that. Unfortunately, I think I have a slight resting bitch face when I'm in the gym particularly, or just in life. Like I just kind of look a bit like closed off maybe. And I don't mean to be that way, because when someone talks to me, I'm not like that. But I worry that they're like, I don't know, they're just like intimidated. But I'd love for someone like that to come up and be like, oh, like, do you have any advice for me as like a younger lifter? Like, this never happens, right? Because you have an ego at that age that's bigger than what your ego is once you've been doing it for a long time. But it's funny feeling like they look at me as like a proper older lifter now. They probably do.
Yeah, probably. And without putting a knife into that bleeding wound already, the receding hairline probably doesn't help with that as well, right?
I hide it well.
All right.
And then the hair is going to come through and hide it as well. That has to happen. Otherwise, I don't know why I'm growing out my hair. Which actually, it's funny thinking about like growing out my hair. It's such a like, you probably had this maybe with your moustache, I don't know, but you go through like awkward periods and you're just like, me and Charlotte booked a holiday now and I'm like, fucking hell, my hair's not in a place where I want it to be. I'm just going to cut it. And I'm like, but Steve, like you have to see it through. Like it's almost like a test for myself. Like I'm almost just being stubborn towards the goal of growing it longer than it's ever been, just to say I've done it, and to like, I don't know, go through the discomfort, because there's something about it that I think will be rewarding when I am like, okay, you did the thing, you got the long hair, it looked like shit, then you got your hair cut, and now you know, like you don't need to venture down that path anymore.
I mean, if we were to always then preach do what it is that we preach, then you would need to stick with it no matter what, because that's basically what we always say about something like bodybuilding, nutrition. Just stick it out and then assess the situation, right?
That's what I was like. If I cut my hair just because I have a 3-night holiday or like a 4-day holiday, man, you have not got like any grit in this endeavor. Like, come on, has bodybuilding not taught you anything? Like, come on, it's like the person who starts, they're in a mass gaining phase and they've got this short holiday, so they're gonna do a mini cut the week before it or something. It's like, guy, this is not the way to go about things. It's not that important. Funny
enough, Steve, because right before the show, you said you still, once again, don't know really what to talk about. But so yesterday, I think it was, I checked out. So as a disclaimer, I haven't really, honestly, no idea about the German fitness industry. I am so clueless when it comes to this. I would even assume that foreign people from a different country have even a better understanding of what's going on in the German fitness industry than I do. Anyway, I was clicking on that one guy who is even competing, I think, at the WMBF as well. And he has this bigger YouTube channel. I was just checking him out because I wanted to just like know what's going on in the fitness realm in Germany. And he was talking then about he apparently also biomechanics is now a big deal in Germany now. And he had this one video where he then claimed, and I know where this is coming from. He's a YouTuber. He wants to generate clicks, but he made those very, very strong claims about seated leg curls versus then lying leg curls. That seated leg curls, that one study has shown significantly more gains on the seated leg curls. And then he sold it as if it's so much more superior than the lying leg curls or any kind of other leg curl variation. And then because I'm very much interested of how other people are perceiving it then. And you scroll down and everyone is just like, everyone is so positive and vocal about it then. And ingrains that belief or that claim to be the truth. And that is something that I take very, very big issues with, especially when it's just like that one study and without critically thinking about it. And especially each and every single study has even some disclaimers, often like, okay, this is what we don't know yet, and I would like to have or conduct more research in the future in that field to then further confirm something or maybe disprove something, yada, 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 right? But it's just being sold as if like seated leg curls was so much better than lying leg curls. And I take big issues with that because if you really think about it and break it down into real life applications, and this is also something that we have discussed over and over the past couple of episodes with other movements such as, I don't know, Sierra rows we took as an example, that it's probably not coming down to then seated leg curls versus lying leg curls and seeing a huge difference by the end of 10 years of doing one or the other. And even if one is so much more superior than the other, you can probably make it up with one or two more repetitions on the other one. And then it's already balanced out. And so many people then in the comment section, because he was then doing lying leg curls, were just like, doesn't that conflict with what it is that you've claimed in that other video, that seated leg curls are so much more superior? And then he was bringing up some ridiculous claims and arguments as to why he's now doing the lying leg curls. And I don't know, what do you think about this? I just want to bring it up because it perfectly aligned with what it is that we've talked about over the past episodes with practical applications and just thinking about it kind of 1 to 2 steps further of the efficiency of a workout and also how much it really does make a difference, you know?
Yeah, I think, obviously I haven't seen the video, so I don't know how he kind of put it out there, but though I can kind of understand it from how you described it, where I think this is where people wrongly use science, where they're like, science is like a marketing tool and they're using it like that, and they're using it in an extreme way because they know that will get eyes on them. They know that will kind of get people in camps and like giving them thumbs up and props, and people like black and white answers, so they're just like, oh yeah, like seated leg curls and this is the only movement that I should ever do for my hamstrings, or I should never do lying leg curls. And then you often see these people where and this is the horrible truth, is he knew what he was doing. If he's now doing lying leg curls, he doesn't like, he's not as dogmatic towards always having to like seated leg curls, and they're always superior in every situation, because he sees the benefit of doing lying leg curls if he's doing them. But it's like, it's those people who become like dogmatic and build their name around one thing, but then in practice they're not doing that. They're like, oh yeah, do intermittent fasting, that'll provide you the best results. Then you look at their diet and they're like eating meals through the day, and you're like, oh, so you're just doing that for marketing and to like dupe people and to sell a product and to grow an audience. It's like, when in reality, you know, that's not really the case. And that's not what I like. And I think we've spoken about it loads of times. We're like, are we not dogmatic enough? Are we not extreme enough, where people like, we don't appeal to that extreme mindset? We appeal to the people who have got kind of, maybe they've been in a camp before and now they're like, oh, actually it's somewhere in the middle, isn't it? And that's where we are. But there's so few people who want to be sitting on, like, not sitting on the fence, but realizing that there's a gray area within everything. So yeah, it's frustrating when you see that, because I could definitely see where people could go, right, I'm going to subscribe to mass. These guys are the smartest of the smartest. I'm going to take some of their studies and I'm going to like remove all the nuance that they talk about, and I'm just going to pick the key points like significant growth, and I'm going to change that to like far superior, and they just use it as a marketing ploy. And that's deceiving, because science is not like that.
I know this is also our responsibility to then differentiate between what is entertainment and what is education. And I know a vlogger is not necessarily educating. Maybe there is some kind of percentage part of certain YouTubers. I think I'm not following Jeff Nippard's stuff anymore, because I don't know, I'm not watching a lot of YouTube stuff or fitness stuff anymore. That has nothing to do with the people. I'm not even watching RP stuff, and I very much respect the people from RP. But I do remember that Jeff Nippard did a fantastic job of having great entertainment alongside them with great information, and being also very critical about things and very objectively presenting the data. So I can understand that it's also, once again, our responsibility to differentiate between what entertainment is and what education is. But at the same time, it's also then being used, stuff like this, to stay relevant. And I don't know how I feel about it, to be very honest, because it's like it's presenting science as something that it isn't. And that is kind of that it gives you the ultimate truth of like, this is it and nothing else. And that is something that science never does. Right? And to then take advantage of that and sell it as such with clickbaity titles and all that kind of stuff is kind of then misleading and deceiving to some extent. And especially when there is an audience who can't really differentiate or decipher between like, okay, how much of a value there is in that information, how important it really is. Because you may remember still, Steve, your first initial years in the fitness industry yourself. You had some questions that now seem ridiculous to you. But back then, you didn't know any kind of better. Everything for you was on the same level. And then over the years, you were able to sort these things of like the hierarchy of importance. But this takes years. And if you then bring even more complexity into the mix, then you create kind of a world where then people are reliant on what it is that you tell them, because they can't really decipher the truth themselves anymore, because it has just become such a complex mumble jumble, basically. Yeah. That only you know the truth to.
Yeah. This is why I think, at least the way we try and educate and bring people back to the principles. So what truly matters for muscle growth and like the bigger picture. Because I was just thinking as you were talking about this, an easy clickbaity video we could do, or anyone could do, is the review, the study that Bill Campbell reviewed just recently with the thermic effect of feeding. Because there was a significant difference if you ate your meals at a similar time through the day versus randomly through the day to the thermic effect of feeding. So you could title it like, maximize your thermic effect of feeding through this unique strategy or something, and then you do
way
this video.
Too complex of a title.
I don't know titles.
Way too complex. People wouldn't click that.
How to maximize your TEF, or I don't know.
Also way too complex. It would need to be something
boost
like
your metabolism.
For example, more gains with this simple trick. Also.
Exactly. So, but then when you boil it down, if because you could completely just not tell them what the significant effect was, because the significance in the bigger picture and broader picture of your entirety of your total daily energy expenditure was fucking tiny. Like, it was like a few calories, and it's unlikely to make a big difference for a lot of people. And there's much bigger things within your metabolism that's going to have a larger effect, like bringing up your steps from 5,000 to 10,000 is going to have a massively bigger effect than what the thermic effect of feeding difference is between similar meal timings and not similar meal timings. But you could be like, oh, that sounds pretty like easy and unique and different, doing lots of steps and stuff. A lot of people are talking about that. That sounds much more effort. So you could like ignore some parts of the research, but include some parts. And I think that's where that's my issue in some areas of the fitness industry, where they have like some good information in terms of the science, but then they wash it down with like some just like kind of bullshit, because often science is not sexy. Like Brad Schoenfeld's a great example, where he's always like, it depends, and brings in like, it's not fully like overpowered, and he never gives black and white answers. He's always like very kind of nuanced in how he answers things, and I think that puts loads of people off him. But that's the reason we love him and the way that he presents information. And it can be frustrating even in my, like, sometimes I want like a black and white answer, but it's just never the case.
Yeah. No, I have the feeling that it's kind of like a game of chairs, where everyone needs to then stand up once the music is playing, and then some other people are taking the seat the next round, and that next round, so everyone presents some kind of a new trend or so, you know? And biomechanics was one of those where the people were the fastest in like the last year. I have the feeling that now slowly the trend is once again also fading. You don't really hear about that often anymore, which is, I think, something that has been commonly seen over the past couple of years. There are plenty of examples that I can think of that was hyped to the girls, and now you don't really hear about it anymore. Because fundamentally, yes, biomechanics is, of course, part of movement, right? But the emphasis and also the focus and attention that it received was probably not justified, right? And now it's shifting towards probably at some point a different trend. What it will be, no one knows, because otherwise you will always be the richest guy on earth, because you will always then be one step ahead of other people, right? There will be a time in maybe the next couple of months, maybe in 1 year, where the next bigger thing is then present and everyone is talking about it and stuff like this.
It's going to be something along the lines of like getting to the longest muscle length possible.
I thought about this as well right now.
And I don't know how that's going to play out. That'll be interesting. The one I'm thinking, I don't know why this one always comes to mind with training, but there was a time where the DUP, daily undulating periodization, was like the thing.
God damn.
And it didn't make any, like, it was just like varying your rep ranges through the week is better for like your stimulus to fatigue ratio, essentially. And it's like every good program incorporated that. But people were selling programs like, I'm doing the DUP, blah, blah, blah. And it was like, okay, guys.
Man,
people
I
just
completely
jumped on
forgot
it.
about that one. That was already kind of 2015, 16.
Yeah, that was like pretty early when we were kind of getting into things, like into the thick of things. But it's just funny how even back then, I think Mike Zodos was always like, so now I've come across the, like, science has found potentially the least worst like way of doing daily undulating periodization. He was a great example of someone who's like knows the limitations of science and doesn't try and like be like, we found the best DUP ever. He's like, no, we found the least worst so far. Like, we're ever evolving and learning new things. So yeah, I don't know what, I think we're still in a transitionary period towards like, the pendulum swung with biomechanics. Maybe it swung a little bit at some point with like the camps of training to failure and reps in reserve, and everything's kind of come back to like a more middle ground where it's like, okay, maybe we don't need to be that extreme with our approach to trying to train muscle groups. and maybe reps in reserve and failure training aren't that far apart from one another, and likely both camps are using an element of both, even if they don't know they're doing it. It's like everything's kind of come to the middle. So yeah, we're waiting for that next like swing where it's going to be Milo Wolf squatting only a quarter reps in the Smith machine.
Yeah. So let's
Something
take
like
a
that.
short break, and then we will be back with further discussions around this. Do you not see the progress you would like? Are you sick of writing your own programs? Or perhaps you need some accountability in order to stick with a plan? Then it's time to start working with us. We at Revive Stronger offer a truly personalized coaching service. You'll get more than just an email with some macros or random cookie cutter program. With Revive Stronger, you will be the center of our attention. You will receive your own fully individualized training protocol alongside a customized nutritional strategy. We create the coaching around your needs, wants, personal preferences, and your own unique lifestyle. Every single week, we delve into your program in order to make appropriate adjustments so that we get the most out of your time and the best possible outcome. We help both female and male athletes to seriously change their body composition by adding more muscle mass and decreasing fat tissue. No matter if you're a competitive bodybuilder or just want to look better, if you need help with your progress and taking your physique to the next level, our coaching is for you. It's time to make a change. Sign up today and let's revive stronger. So back again from the very, very short break. I hope that you guys don't mind, but it's of course an important part of our podcast, and of course promoting our services and making a living off of that. With that being said, I'm not bringing these kind of things up to just like bash other people. I'm just thinking that what it is that I've also talked about, or we've talked about over the past couple of months now. It's kind of, we are always being accused, and there was one in the last episode as well, of making things too complicated. And I think that in itself, when you really listen to what it is that we have to say, I'm actually a big promoter of making things as simplistic as possible. So what is it that I'm saying? It is learn to train hard. Of course, the definition of hard training, everyone kind of knows what it feels like. When you then go in there and you can tell like, okay, this was an intense session and I've trained like the muscle groups that I intended to, and not just like, I feel it everywhere, but not in the muscle group specifically that I wanted to hit, right? I feel it in my neck. I feel it in my, my eyes, right? But my bicep, I don't know. I can't tell because my entire body is hurting. That's not what I'm talking about. Then also, nutritionally speaking, don't be too dogmatic. Try to actually have a sufficient protein intake, meet your caloric targets on the vast majority of days, right? And do those things for long enough, right? And then, of course, later down the line, the more experience and knowledge you've gained, you can then, of course, add certain other more complex things into the mix. But those things, they need to always be ticked off, because otherwise everything else that you throw into the mixer is just, I don't know, another ingredient that kind of makes everything else also, you can't really taste what's in the entire shake anymore, right? And you're losing kind of track of what's really important. And if you really then boil it down, I think that 3 things are important, right? And that is not making things overly complex. And when it then comes to thinking about complex things, it's an entirely different story. I think it's absolutely all right to think about more complex ideas so that you can also learn and educate yourself, but also maybe widen your horizon when it comes to other methodologies that are out there, making sense of things, and also having a better fundamental understanding of then also critically analyze other claims and stuff, because this is something that you can only do if you have the knowledge and experience for it. And for this, you need to sometimes think more complex. But that doesn't mean that you have to then apply complex things. And once again, I really just hope that whenever there's a trend, that people are a little bit more cautious and not just like jump immediately on it and be like, I need to do this, and I need to do this, and I need to do that. Because then eventually you probably also lose track of what's really important, and you don't really make the progress that you would like to do. And then things start to suck. You start to hate the bodybuilding realm, and then you become a keyboard warrior because actually you hate the entire journey, and now you need to make it also as miserable for other people as it is for you.
Yeah, I haven't read the comments yet from our last video, but I did like briefly, and we often get told we're overcomplicating things. I'm like, man, I really feel like the way we talk about bodybuilding is really simple. Like, I really feel like we always bring it back to the principles like specificity, overload, fatigue management. But I think even me saying those words to some people is like, that's complex. It's like, no, it's just very well be. It's like specificity just means you're going to the gym and what you're doing is you're trying to grow muscle, not doing something that's like completely not required for that goal. And fatigue management just means taking some rest days, maybe take some deloads, being careful not to overdo it one day so you're under recovered for your next workout. So kind of take control of your volume. And that's where I think, like you said, when you start discussing these fairly basic principles, it can sound quite complex. And that's where, I don't know if you've had this, Pascal, but obviously we coach a lot of coaches, people who listen to the podcast, they're very invested in this. And when you bring them and you take them through the spreadsheet, I think sometimes people are like, oh, wow, like I can see, now you've explained it, I can see the principles in practice, and it's actually way more kind of it's less complex than I thought it was going to be. And now that they can see it and they go through like a mesocycle or two of coaching and like, oh, wow, like I'm really seeing those principles play out in practice. And it's actually quite a basic setup. Like, again, like you said, if you're making things overly complex and someone can't even execute the plan because they're like, oh, I don't know how to do this. It could be everything from exercise selection to, like, I don't know, the way that you're approaching your progression week to week. If someone can't understand it, like, you're never going to be able to get them in the gym actually doing it. And it is like, so many people say it. Like, I think Jordan Peters is someone who's like famously for it. Like, he's like, bodybuilding is freaking basic. Like, it is actually basic. It's just people, I think, try and make it almost too basic, where it's like they don't have to think about tracking their lifts, they don't have to track their body weight. It's like, well, no, being in a surplus and making sure you're in a surplus through body weight addition is a good idea. Logging your lifts is a good idea so you can see that you are progressing them over time and you're not just like going through the motions. They're not complex things to be doing, but I think some people are like, oh, I thought you said it was basic and easy. That means I can just go into the gym and like train to failure and I'll grow like a weed. It's like, not quite.
No, absolutely. And to be very fair, I think that I had a time where I unnecessarily tried to make things more complex than it needed to be. And I, over the past years, have made more of a 180 and went down the route of more simplistic, more basic. But of course, if you just listen to us now, it can still sound as if it's kind of, man, why do you have to make things so overly complicated? Because it's probably like you said, to us, it doesn't really sound or seem complicated anymore because it is or has become the norm. But you had that experience, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago with that guy in the gym where you just chatted with him, I think it was.
Yeah.
And he was just like, what the hell are you even talking about? Right. So yeah, I can definitely see where people are then coming from. But I also beg to differ that we are not making it complicated. But of course, I'm biased, right? I'm biased. I don't think it's complicated. But if someone, I don't know, a French person would come over to me speaking French only, and at some point, dude, I can't really make up any kind of French accents, but he's saying like, man, why don't you? Why can't you understand me? French is so easy to talk, right? Yeah. Of course it is for you, right? So maybe I'm in that same position as the French person is for me.
Yeah, it's with the discussion in the gym, this is a good example because I think this is where someone would hear, and one of the things that was spoken about was like shocking the muscle. And that's just like I guess a bro term, you could call it, where it's like, oh yeah, you got to do different things because that'll put in a huge amount of novelty towards the muscle and it will shock it to grow. Whereas actually that's quite a complex thing to have to think about and do, like varying things quite frequently and like what counts as shocking and not shocking. Whereas we would be like, hey, you don't need to shock a muscle. Like you just need to provide a sufficient intensity, sufficient volume, and progress that over time. And actually, that's actually way more simple to do because you keep your everything way more static versus, oh, I got to shock it week to week. But I think to some people, shocking sounds like, oh, that's quite appealing. Like I can do one thing this week, do another thing the other week. And it's like, yeah, but that's actually, you're overcomplicating the process there actually, and making, I would say, you're going to probably get worse results via changing things that frequently. So yeah, and even to the point of which like people not eating carbs after 6 p.m. used to be like something people would say. It's like, that's overcomplicating it. You actually just need to hit a calorie goal by the end of the day. But they're like, yeah, but if I just don't eat carbs, I won't put on fat and I'll be lean. It's like, no, if you track your calories through the day, and now that's more complex than what they were trying to. So people look for like these rules that like sound appealing. They're easy to kind of implement and do. And it's like, actually, like you need to be monitoring and tracking some basic things and then like just move forward with those over time. And it's just more effort. I think that's what it boils down to. It's not necessarily more complex. It's just more things to have to think about than some people want to.
Yeah. And yeah, no, absolutely. I have nothing really to add there.
And some people didn't have to. Like when we started, how many of these things did you even have to think about? You didn't. You just grew. And
that's
then
exactly
maybe jump
what I've been thinking as well. Of like, there are certain people out there where things are just coming easy to them. It's kind of the same we've talked about it when it comes to learning maybe a new skill or a new task or whatever it is, right? We all know that person in school or in university who had such an easy time of learning one specific thing. And you, on the other hand, man, it took you like days and hours of just like intense learning experiences before you act or before it may click to you, right? Why should it be any different in something like this, where then genetics play a huge role? Right? For some, it just comes easy and natural. So, and of course, for them, it's then more of a thing of like, why are you even overcomplicating things? It's just like, go hard or go home, right?
Yeah.
Eat big, bro. Something like this. It's funny because there are certain individuals that I even follow on Instagram that have tremendous physiques. But if they are then the ones critical of the things that you're recommending, it's not because they are critical about certain things. It doesn't have to just be me, but when I see that they are then commenting on other people's stuff, and you take a look at their physique and be just like, man, if I were in your position and had your body, I would probably, very, very likely, talk the same way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's infuriating because then people use that ad hominem attack of like, dude, you don't even look like you lift. And then it really infuriates me when I see smart people using that ad hominem attack, where and actually I've seen this used against people who are really into biomechanics. And I get the appeal of it, because even I want to do it sometimes, where I'm like, oh, you're overcomplicating like a certain training method. I've got a bigger back than you. It's like, it's such a stupid argument. Do not even try and go there, because you're lowering yourself completely. Yeah. It's not a good way to argue things, but it also appeals to an audience. People are like, true. Oh yeah, you're right. You are bigger than him. Therefore I should listen to you. And it's like, oh no, people are lost again.
Absolutely.
And there is some truth to it, I guess, because there has to be some proof in the pudding, but genetics are such a big factor. You cannot be sure that that's any indicator of someone's knowledge at all.
Not only that, it's genetics and time. That combination is just like trumps everyone, to be honest, right? If you started training at the age of 13, you're probably very well set up already.
Yeah.
Right? Because by the time that you're 23, or now that with me, 35, you've already trained more than 20 years. And you don't need to be the most genetically blessed to look freaking amazing after over 20 years of proper training. So time and genetics, holy shit.
I don't know if you ever get this, Pascal, where I sometimes see people who are maybe following us, following like RP and 3DMJ and smart people in the industry. And they're not overly impressive now in terms of their physique. They have a decent like foundation, great form, great technique, like clearly following the right people. And I'm like, I want to fast forward 10 years and see where you're at, because you're going to be something.
Man, I have worked with athletes like this, and still am working with some athletes that are like this. maybe turning 20 or 21 or something like this, have already trained since 5-6 years, have been introduced to more of an evidence-based approach from the get-go, while still training hard, having tremendous form and all that kind of stuff. For them, if nothing severe is happening, maybe being hit by a van or something like this, I don't know, then probably you just need to put in more time. And in 5 years, holy fuck.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, yeah.
It's just, that is what it is. It's just like a matter of time for these individuals. And it's quite exciting to see that. But
it is.
Equally, you see people like this and then they don't. And this is why it's so important what you said, where that time component is so important, because if you don't invest enough time into the thing, you're not going to get much of it. And I think some people, they just don't love it enough. No. Like they, for whatever reason.
Not just that. And let's be real. In your early 20s or so, when you're starting, you have quite a different worldview. You have quite different interests and hobbies, and also quite different availability of your time as well. And man, I can't tell you how many people I worked with over the past couple of years that have had high ambitions of changing their body composition, looking much better, getting stronger, and I haven't seen anything from them in years now. They completely disappeared, and that makes me assume that maybe they are still training, maybe like, I don't know, just only 3 days per week now, but the priority of what it was when they worked with me to now has completely shifted to something that is, of course, acceptable as well, because especially when people are having like a family at home, full-time job, they are not maybe personal trainers or online coaches. Things are getting harder, much harder. And I think that not many people have a realistic expectation of how much of an effort it then is to still juggle everything. Bodybuilding and self-improvement in that regard needs to be very important to you to still be able to train 5-6 times per week and still manage to then be there, spend enough time with your family, also continuing doing your obligations at work, etc., etc. It becomes a very, very, very challenging task for the vast majority of people. And that's why you often see people with huge talent in the sense of like genetics and a great starting point, disappearing in their mid-20s to 30s.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes complete sense. And I've said it before, I'm like, I don't think, you would never know, but people reaching their genetic ceiling, I just think other things become priorities for them, where they just can't give what it requires to progress, to keep going at that point, which is fine. Like, again, your mid-20s, that's probably when your career is like really starting to take off. You're starting to go down a certain direction. And again, like you said, if you're not a PT, then like, I don't know, you could be doing meetings at random times, like getting in your training stuff, having a family, another challenge that comes in. And so like for us, it's well, for me in particular, it's just like part of my day. It's so easy to slot in. I'm like, and I understand that. And I know a lot of, it's funny because people will bash like these younger influencers who are just like, come like like nail every single minor detail that you possibly could. And if you aren't, then you aren't willing to sacrifice. And it's like, kid, you have all the time in the world and your parents are like making it like you don't even have to pay rent.
But you don't know any better. When I was younger, I thought that I have no time at all. And now looking back in hindsight, I think I was full of shit. I was just a lazy bastard, to be honest. With responsibility, you just make things happen if they are important to you. Somehow, right? And of course, you only have that much time available on one particular day or throughout the week. And then you need to start distributing that time more evenly, and sometimes even juggle like big time, where it's like, okay, I can squeeze a couple of minutes in here, a couple of minutes in here, right? And if I were to get the train, for example, at 5:30, I can manage to be at the gym at 6, be at home again at 7:30, still have at dinner with my wife and kids and stuff like this, right? It becomes ever so more challenging. And when you're young, you have so much time that you don't really think about it as a scarce resource. So sometimes you, of course, chill just with playing some video games. And then by the end of the day, you're saying like, man, I'm so busy. I don't really have any kind of time. But you only realize how much time you have once you forward 10 years and you are in a quite different position.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm going to switch gears a little bit here, Pascal. We're now coming into March soon. And I think the competitive season will kick off maybe in some places around April, June, July. Like that's when things are happening. I have a couple of questions. One, have you got any kind of competitors like who are coming into the early start of the season? And two, have you thought about any more about 2024?
I would first answer number two. I haven't thought about it anymore, simply because the plan stands to some extent. And if nothing really gets in the way, then I will still execute that plan. To one, funny enough, this year has been, and I haven't really thought about it up until your question now, very, very quiet when it comes to competitors. I have a couple of competitors that would first, though, compete more so in the second half, so somewhere around kind of starting August, September time. I have two athletes who are competing in a April, May timeframe, but that's basically it.
The WNBF First Timers UK?
No, it's okay. Everything kind of American, because also there are some. I mean, you have NPC and all that kind of stuff, you know. So there are so many shows, and you have the luxury most of the time to compete in a time of the year whenever you feel like it. Most of the time, depending, of course, of the federation, and that's why, quieter when it comes to this. What about yourself, Steve? Both questions.
Yeah, it's interesting. I definitely have a few people who they haven't started prep yet, and we're in the process of planning kind of where their shows are, and they're good. Most people, when they're in Europe, I think do later in the year. I know in Australia it's a little bit more common, like they have a season A and season B.
Unless you've never competed, because then some beginner shows are actually in May timeframe. Yeah. April, even in Germany, I think it's kind of, I'm quite certain that there's a WNBF. Or is it GNBF? No, I think it's GNBF in the first half of the year even. Yeah, so, no, I may have two people for the WNBF First Timers. One person, like, I say for sure, like, they're just going through some kind of health concerns at the moment. Just literally kicked in at the start of prep. It was like almost came out of nowhere in a sense, which is unfortunate, but I think she'll be still in a good spot to be able to compete at the WNBF First Timers, which would be cool. And it's always nice taking someone. It's nice to have that First Timers, because I think from talking to the two athletes, it takes pressure off them. They're like, they don't feel, because they're like, oh, everyone's a first timer. I don't want to say to them, it's like novice category, like you were in it. The two guys in your novice category were like, arguably would do very well in open categories for sure. Absolutely. So first timers is always like, you don't know who you're going to get. I actually just had a consult with someone yesterday for the first timers where he was looking at it. He's already started prep. So we'll see if he signs up. And then, I'll have probably quite a busy season. It's funny because when you're at this part of the year, you don't really realize how busy the second half could get. But certainly I'm not, like the majority of my roster is not competitors. It's maybe like 10 at most that I'll have stepping on stage. But yeah, I'll be excited for that. To me personally, what I've realized over the years, because in the first initial stages of my coaching career, I always thought like, having lots of competitors would be freaking amazing. But then over the years, I realized how much work it can be, especially when the shows are around. And that's why, because it requires so much attention and also just focus around those shows. If then, let's say there are a couple of competitors competing at the same time, and you are, even if you're with them on location, which is hardly ever something that we do, but just on the mobile phone, right, and being available for them 24/7 basically, if you then have plenty of athletes, holy shit, it is a lot. Yeah, it really is a lot. And if you then, for me personally, I have kids at home and they have time on the weekend. Same goes for my wife. And the weekends, I try to minimize my work time as much as possible. When I have a competitor, though, I still want them to feel as if I'm fully there for them. And this is also the feeling that I want to give to them. So they don't really notice anything. But at the same time, if I just were to imagine to have now 10 people on the same weekend, maybe even the same day, I could do this maybe once or twice, absolutely, with an exception is always possible. But doing it like season after season, or kind of several weekends in a row, maybe, that some people are doing, it's something that I didn't want to do. And that's why capping the competitors in your roster, for me personally, is a rewarding thing, because then you still have the luxury and the reward of working with competitors. But at the same time, you cap it because you don't really want to just have the quantity there. You want to provide the quality for yourself, but also then for the athlete. That's the way that I see things.
Yeah, we cap our clients' numbers, as people know, because we want to give quality. And there's no way I would be able to handle all of my clients being competitors. I haven't got to a point where I have to consider capping competitor numbers, but like you mentioned, I will absolutely get there. I don't know what that number would be. It might be something like 15 in a season, because the way we work and the way I work with competitors is I give them a lot of attention. Every client gets a lot of attention, but particularly when a client is in like peak week and they're closing in on their shows, we're looking at their posing, the amount of attention I give them, I cannot spread myself over like you said, even 10 in like 1 week would be like, that would be kind of hell. So yeah, I don't know how some coaches manage that, but it's just not the way I'd like to do it. And like you said, it's actually, I wouldn't like to spread myself that thinly, because I don't want to feel like I'm giving anyone but 100% of me. And that's just actually reminded me, I have 2 clients that might be competing. I can't actually remember the specific dates of their shows, but one is Australian. He's doing men's physique. I think he's getting close to 10 weeks out. And also Mitch, who is fucking shredded. And we're going to probably go through, what would you call it? A metabolic building phase, I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
We can start raising his carbs up leading into the show. He's competing earlier in the season as well. So he's actually under 10 weeks out for sure. He's in his last mesocycle of basically taking off the last little bits of fat. So, and like you said, it's nice. Like I quite like to have them spread out. I'd hate to have 10 in one weekend, man. That'd be so stressful, man.
Yeah, and I know that some people are doing it and they love it, right? But it's the same as I love sushi, and maybe you sometimes like to have sushi, but you couldn't really endure it for like 7 days out of the week. Hey, if I could have sushi 7 days out of the week without paying that or without getting broke or so, I would fucking love to have sushi like 7 days out of the week, right? I wouldn't get burned out by it. Whereas other people would be like, oh, this is way too much, right? And it's the same when it comes to this as well. For me, it would just be too much. Yeah. And I would start to then probably not enjoy the process anymore. And that is something that I rather avoid instead of pushing the limit and just see how I'm doing.
On the point of 2024, this is a very final point. I joked to Charlotte where I was like, I'm getting to sub 185 pounds. That is like close to just 10, 15 pounds above stage weight. I could start prep like in a couple of months and just compete this year if I wanted to. Like, I guess that's the upside of me having that lower threshold in terms of body fat where I feel good, where it's like, actually, I don't have to plan it out that much because I'm always like a mini cut away from being at a decent point to start prep, because I'll do some photos maybe on the weekend or something just to check how my physique's looking. But I'm like seeing some bits of me in the mirror and I'm like, oh, damn, Steve. Like it's coming in. But
I'm interested to see what my scale weight will look like after the last couple of days, because there was one day where I'm so stubborn, Steve, and we've talked about it the last time that I had a stomach bug as well, that I still try to get the protein in. Even though that I know that it's not the best idea, right? And it made me feel awful on that one day. And I was only capable of actually getting down 80 grams that one day. And that was the only thing that I had to eat. Thing is, here in the morning, I still felt a little bit bloated and all that kind of stuff. And I had a soup yesterday, so that wouldn't have been reflective. But I can tell that over kind of just the time spent of 3 to 4 days, a lot of weight has come down just because there were just like 2 to 3 days of nearly completely fasted. The second day, I was capable of getting my protein target, but just imagine what it's like. Just getting the protein in, and that was already a challenge. I was managing to get up to 160 only, so just kind of barely one gram kind of per pound of body weight, a little bit below that, but I couldn't eat more. So also there, massive deficit. And then the third day, I was capable of actually then getting a little bit higher, still in a deficit though. So in just a couple of days, my deficit was probably somewhere around kind of 4,000 or 5,000 calories or so. Right. So I'm actually looking forward to what my scale would tell me tomorrow.
Yeah. It's that was similar to me. Like I was very acutely sick and I met 80 grams of protein and like 2,000. I didn't even meet, I think I ate like just over 1,000 calories. And a few days surrounding that, I underate a little bit to maintenance. Not miles under, but I literally dropped like 4 pounds just like immediately. I was below 190 pounds within like that first week of mini cutting after being like at 197. So it's like, you just hold on to this, like I could always call it mass bloat. It's like that food weight, that bloat, that water weight, glycogen. So yeah, you'll probably see a bit of a jump back up once you get eating and pushing again.
And I haven't even taken into consideration that one night where I puked out probably half of everything that was sitting in my stomach. So yeah, but anyway, this is just like a minor blip, but I'm probably somewhere back down at the 78 kilograms or so, something like this, which wouldn't be too bad, but we'll have to wait and see.
Let's start prep.
Yeah, exactly. Cool, guys. Then thank you as always for tuning in. If you haven't found us yet over on other podcast providers and you're still listening now over on YouTube, please find us over there. A subscription or a like button or whatever. So subscribing to the new RSS feed would be highly appreciated so that we can get those numbers back up again as they are normally at. Other than that, leave a comment in the comment section below. Leave a like, leave a subscribe, leave some love here. And I guess I'll speak to you guys soon.
Cheers, guys.
Losing weight fast while maintaining muscle mass. Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? It isn't though. It's reality and we know how to do it. And we will help you achieve this. The Minicut Movement is an 8-week fat loss program to make you lose a huge chunk of fat while maintaining muscle mass at the same time. We will support you from the beginning to the end so that you see the results you would like to and come out of it much stronger. You'll receive a fully automated spreadsheet that is based on your nutritional needs. You can choose between 6 different male and female training templates. Over 30 videos will guide you through each and every single step of the Minicut so that you're getting the most out of your journey and that you always know what to do. But the best thing is that you can start whenever you want. The Minicut Movement is open 24/7. So if you want to learn more or you're ready to sign up, hit the link in the description below. So let's revive stronger together.